The millionaire kidnapped his best friend's bride. But on wedding night he discovered. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. The grand ballroom glittered with golden chandeliers, the air heavy with the fragrance of white roses arranged across every polished table. Guests in elegant suits and gowns lifted crystal glasses, toasting to what they believed was a perfect union. A love story written in diamonds and silk, a celebration of loyalty and brotherhood. The bride, veiled in lace, stood at the altar with trembling hands. Her heart was not pounding with joy but with unease, a quiet warning she tried to silence. She glanced at the groom beside her, a man chosen not by fate but by convenience and family ties. To the world, he was the perfect husband. To her, he was a stranger she barely understood. And then, like a sudden shadow across a bright flame, the doors of the ballroom slammed open, every head turned. A man strode in, tall, broad-shouldered, with eyes that carried both fury and sorrow. He was not the groom. He was the groom's best friend, a man of wealth, power, and reputation. A man no one expected to appear in this way. The bride gasped, her lips parting beneath the veil. The groom stiffened, his face turning pale, as if the secrets of his heart had just been ripped open in front of everyone. The intruder's voice cut through the music and laughter. "Stop this wedding." The crowd erupted in whispers. Cameras flashed. The air grew tight, suffocating, as if the walls themselves held their breath. The bride tried to speak, but no sound escaped. The man's gaze locked onto her, fierce yet pleading, as though she were the only one in the room. "You cannot marry him," he said, each word deliberate, echoing with finality. "Because from this moment on, you belong to me." The hall descended into chaos. Guests shouted. The groom lunged forward, but the man's hand was faster, reaching for the bride. In an instant, the world spun. The bride's vision blurred as she felt herself lifted, carried away from the altar, away from the glittering roses and crystal chandeliers, away from the life she thought had been chosen for her. The night air struck her face as they burst from the ballroom doors. The limousine roared to life, tires screeching against the cobblestone driveway. Her veil fluttered like a torn wing in the wind. She fought against him, her fists pounding against his chest, her voice raw with fury. "Let me go, you have no right. This is madness." But his arms held her firm, not with cruelty, but with a desperate strength. His jaw tightened, his eyes refusing to look away. "You think you know the truth," he said, voice rough, "but everything you believe about him, about this marriage, is a lie." The limousine sped into the night, the mansion shrinking behind them. The bride's tears blurred her vision, torn between fear, rage, and the faintest flicker of something she could not name. She pressed herself against the seat, her pulse racing, her breath short. "Why?" she demanded, her voice breaking. "Why would you do this to me? To him? To everyone?" For the first time, silence filled the space between them. The man turned his head, the glow of the city lights reflecting in his dark eyes. His lips parted, but the words did not come. In that silence, a dangerous truth lingered, heavy and unspoken. A truth that would change everything she thought she knew about loyalty, betrayal, and love. And as the city stretched out before them, glittering like 1,000 watching eyes, she realized her life had just been rewritten by a man who should have been her protector, not her captor. The limousine sped through the city streets, leaving the glittering mansion and the echoes of shocked guests far behind. The bride sat pressed against the leather seat, her chest heaving, her hands gripping her gown as though it could protect her from the man who had just torn her from her own wedding. Her heart pounded in her ears, drowning out the hum of the engine. He sat across from her, his dark suit unbuttoned, his gaze steady, unflinching. His presence filled the narrow space, not just with physical strength, but with an intensity that felt impossible to escape. She glared at him, her voice trembling with fury. "You ruined everything. You humiliated me in front of hundreds of people. You destroyed my wedding. Why? Why would you do this to me?" His jaw tightened, but his eyes did not leave hers. Because that wedding was a lie. And because I will not let you be chained to a man who sees you only as a transaction. Her breath caught. His words struck her like cold water. But she shook her head, refusing to let the confusion soften her anger. You speak as if you know everything about my life. You speak as if you have the right. But you are nothing to me. You are his friend, his best man. What right do you have to steal me from him? For the first time, his gaze wavered. The limousine slowed, turning sharply before stopping in front of a towering glass building. The driver opened the door, and the man gestured for her to step out. She hesitated, fear and indignation battling inside her. Move, he said quietly. His voice was low, not harsh, but it carried a weight that left no room for defiance. She stepped out onto the pavement. The city lights reflected off the glass walls, and the night air was sharp against her flushed skin. He guided her through the revolving doors, into a lobby of marble and steel. The staff looked up, startled, but no one dared to intervene. His authority was unquestionable here. They entered a private elevator. As the doors closed, her voice cracked. You cannot keep me here. People will come looking. He will come looking. You cannot hide me from the world. The man turned toward her, his expression unreadable. I am not hiding you. I am protecting you. But from this moment forward, everything changes. The elevator opened to a penthouse floor. She stepped into a living room larger than most homes, with floor-to-ceiling windows that revealed the city skyline glowing like scattered jewels. She turned in a slow circle, disbelief etched across her face. This is your prison, she whispered bitterly. No, he replied, pulling a thick folder from the desk and laying it before her. This is your shield, and this, he tapped the folder, is the contract that binds us. Her hands shook as she opened the folder. Legal pages stared back at her, dense with words she could hardly process through the haze of shock. Marriage contract? She gasped. Yes, he said firmly. You will be my wife. On paper. In public. To the world you belong to me. It is the only way to keep you safe from him. Tears welled in her eyes, burning hot against her skin. She slammed the folder shut. You are insane. Do you hear yourself? You are forcing me into another marriage, a false one, just hours after I tried to escape the first. His voice softened, but it did not lose its strength. This is not the same. That man would have broken you. I will protect you, even if you hate me for it. She stumbled back, shaking her head. You cannot protect me by destroying me. He stepped closer, his voice lowering to a dangerous whisper. You think I am your enemy. But one day, you will understand why I did this. Until then, fight me all you want. The contract is signed tomorrow morning. Her chest rose and fell with ragged breaths. The city outside glittered with indifference as her world collapsed inside this gilded cage. She was no longer the bride she had been hours ago. She was something else now, caught in a web of secrets, contracts, and a man whose motives she could not yet comprehend. And though her heart screamed to resist, a chilling question crept into her mind. What if he was right? The night inside the penthouse was colder than the streets outside. The bride sat rigid on the velvet sofa, her eyes fixed on the unsigned contract that lay on the table. The pages seemed to glow beneath the chandelier light, as though mocking her, daring her to seal her fate. He stood by the window, his tall frame outlined by the city skyline. The silence between them was heavy, broken only by the faint hum of traffic far below. Finally, she rose to her feet, her gown dragging across the polished floor. You think you can control me with ink on paper, she said, her voice sharp. But no contract will make me your wife in truth. I will never play along. Oh. He turned slowly, his expression unreadable. Then fight me, he said quietly. Defy me at every turn if that is what you choose. But the world will still see you as mine. Her fists clenched at her sides. You stole me. You humiliated me. And now you expect me to pretend? You expect me to sit at your side while you parade me like some possession? His eyes darkened. He strode across the room, stopping just inches from her. His voice lowered, each word deliberate. You are not my possession. You are my responsibility. Do you understand that difference? Her chest heaved as she stared up at him, anger and confusion warring in her heart. Responsibility? You destroyed my life in the name of responsibility? For a moment, his face flickered with something raw, a shadow of pain she did not understand. He stepped back, his tone softer but no less firm. Yes, because if I had not, you would be standing at the side of a man who would use you until nothing remained of you. You think I am the villain, but I am the only thing standing between you and ruin. Her voice cracked, but she refused to let the tears fall. You cannot decide my future. You cannot rewrite my life. The air grew tense, as though the walls themselves absorbed their battle. Their voices echoed against the marble and glass, clashing like swords in a duel. Neither could win. You will not break me, she said, her voice trembling but defiant. Then I will bend with you, he replied. But this contract stands. The following morning, the sun poured through the wide windows, lighting the pages of the contract once again. She sat at the table, her fingers hovering over the pen. He stood behind her, arms crossed, watching but saying nothing. She looked at him over her shoulder, her voice bitter. If I sign this, I am not agreeing to be your wife. I am agreeing to survive. Do not mistake one for the other. His eyes met hers, and for the briefest moment, there was no arrogance, no command, only honesty. Survival is all I ask for now. Her hand trembled as she pressed the pen to the paper. Each stroke of her signature felt like a chain closing around her. When the final letter was written, she shoved the pen away as though it burned her skin. There, your victory, she spat. He lifted the contract, sliding it into a leather folder. His tone was calm, but his eyes betrayed something deeper. No, not victory, a beginning. She pushed past him, retreating to the balcony where the city sprawled below like an endless maze. The wind tore at her veil and hair, but it could not tear away the weight crushing her chest. She gripped the railing, her mind screaming against the trap she had fallen into. Inside, he placed the folder into a safe, locking it with quiet finality. His voice carried across the room, firm yet almost weary. You can hate me every day for the rest of your life, but you will live. That is all that matters. Her laughter rang out, sharp and hollow, carried away by the wind. Living is not the same as being alive, and though he did not answer, his eyes lingered on her silhouette against the morning sun, a silent confession buried beneath his guarded facade. For in binding her to him, he had also bound himself caught in a war between duty and desire that neither contract nor pride could ever truly control. The first days in the penthouse were suffocating. The bride wandered through the vast rooms with walls of glass and polished stone, each corner reminding her she was no longer free. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the ticking of the grandfather clock and the low hum of the city beyond the windows. She avoided him as much as possible, but his presence lingered everywhere, from the scent of his cologne to the echo of his footsteps down the marble hallway. Meals were placed before her, prepared by chefs who bowed silently, never meeting her eyes. At first, she refused to eat, a silent rebellion. But hunger clawed at her until she gave in, tasting the food with bitterness on her tongue. He watched her once, across the table, his eyes unreadable, his fork untouched. She slammed her spoon down, her voice sharp. Do you enjoy this? Watching me trapped like a bird in a golden cage? His jaw tightened. If I enjoyed this, I would not be doing it. She scoffed, rising from the table. That is a lie. Power men like you live for control. This is all a game to you. His voice followed her as she left the dining room. You think you are the only one who lost something? You think this is easy for me? She did not turn back. The door closed between them with a heavy thud. Days stretched into nights, each one a battle of wills. She ignored the contract's implications, refusing to wear the ring he had placed in a velvet box on her nightstand. He never forced it onto her finger, but the box remained, an unspoken reminder of the bond neither of them could escape. One evening, she slipped onto the balcony, staring at the city lights. The wind tangled her hair, and her eyes stung with unshed tears. Behind her, his voice came softly, not as a command, but almost as a confession. I know you hate me. She turned sharply, her glare cutting through the night. Hate is not strong enough for what I feel. He stepped closer, the glow from the city painting his features in shadows. Good. Hate keeps you strong, But listen to me. The man you were about to marry, he is not who you believe he is. He is dangerous. He would have taken everything from you." Her chest rose and fell with anger. "You expect me to believe you after what you did? You tore me away like a thief in the night. You humiliated me before the world. And now you want me to trust your word?" For a moment, pain flashed across his face, but it was gone before she could read it. He leaned against the railing, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "I made my choice. One day, you will understand why." Silence stretched between them, filled with the pulse of the city far below. She wrapped her arms around herself, shivering though the air was not cold. His presence both infuriated and unsettled her. She wanted to despise him, yet some part of her, deep and unwilling, was drawn to the cracks in his armor. Later that night, she found herself standing in the library, the shelves filled with leather-bound books. On the desk lay photographs, old and worn. Curiosity overcame anger, and she picked one up. It was him, younger, standing beside the very man she had almost married. They were smiling, arms draped over each other's shoulders like brothers. Her stomach twisted. She had been stolen not just by a stranger, but by someone who once shared a bond with the groom. She heard his voice behind her, low and firm. "Put that down." She turned, the photograph trembling in her hand. "You lied to me. You said you were protecting me, but all I see is revenge. You are not saving me. You are punishing him." He stepped into the room, his eyes burning with an emotion she could not name. "It is not revenge," he said, his voice harsh. "It is justice." Her throat tightened. The photograph slipped from her fingers, landing on the desk with a soft thud. She stared at him, searching for truth in his face, but all she found were more questions. In that moment, she realized she was not just trapped in his penthouse. She was trapped in a war between loyalty and betrayal, a conflict that had begun long before her wedding day. And she was now at the center of it, bound not only by a contract but by secrets that could shatter everything she thought she knew. The following morning, the bride woke to the faint aroma of coffee drifting through the penthouse. For the first time in days, the air did not feel suffocating but strangely calm. She stepped into the kitchen, expecting silence, but found him there, sleeves rolled up, preparing breakfast with a steadiness that startled her. He looked up, meeting her gaze without a word. The sight was so ordinary it unsettled her more than his anger ever had. She crossed her arms, her voice edged with suspicion. "What are you doing?" "Making sure you eat," he replied simply, sliding a plate across the counter. "You skipped dinner." Her instinct was to refuse, to throw his effort back in his face, but her stomach betrayed her with a low growl. She sat reluctantly, picking at the eggs with a fork. For a moment, silence stretched between them, but it was not the heavy silence of hostility. It was quieter, softer. He poured coffee into a cup and set it in front of her. "You do not have to believe me, but I meant what I said. He would have ruined you." Her hand froze on the cup. The bitterness in his voice carried weight, but so did the weariness beneath it. She looked up, her anger tempered by something she did not want to name. "Why? Why do you care what happens to me?" His jaw tightened, and for a long time, he did not answer. Finally, he said, "Because once, I failed someone I cared about. I will not fail again." Her heart twisted at the raw honesty in his tone. She wanted to press further, to tear open the mystery surrounding him, but the words caught in her throat. Instead, she whispered, "I did not ask for your protection, and I did not ask for your trust," he replied quietly. "But you are here, and I will not let him touch you again." The room grew still. She stared down at the coffee, her reflection trembling in the dark liquid. Against her will, warmth spread through her chest, tangled with resentment, confusion, and something dangerously close to gratitude. Later that afternoon, they found themselves in the library again. She reached for a book, her fingers brushing the spines when his hand steadied the ladder she climbed. "Careful," he said. She froze, the closeness between them sparking a tension that neither could deny. For the briefest moment, her anger slipped, replaced by the flicker of an unspoken connection. She quickly pulled the book free and descended, avoiding his eyes. That evening, as the sun dipped below the skyline, painting the penthouse in amber light, she stood on the balcony once more. He joined her, silent at first, then said, "You think I trapped you? But perhaps we are both trapped." She turned, startled by the vulnerability in his voice. And for the first time since the night he stole her from the altar, she wondered if beneath his power, beneath his secrets, there was a man just as lost as she was. Her heart ached with the weight of that thought. And though she fought it, a seed had been planted. A seed that could one day grow into something she had sworn she would never feel for him. Something dangerously close to hope. The calm that had briefly touched the penthouse did not last. Late one evening, the bride found herself pacing the library once again. She had searched through the shelves, not for stories, but for answers. In the bottom drawer of his desk, she uncovered a folder filled with documents, contracts, and photographs. Her heart pounded as she flipped through the pages. What she saw shattered the fragile trust that had begun to form. The photographs were of her groom, the man she was meant to marry, shaking hands with shadowy figures in dimly lit boardrooms. There were receipts of transactions, offshore accounts, and evidence of bribes. Her stomach turned as she pieced it together. Her wedding had not been about love at all. It had been about power, about money, about using her as a pawn in a scheme far darker than she could have imagined. Her hands trembled as she whispered to herself. It was all a lie. Behind her, his voice cut through the silence. Now you see. She spun around, clutching the folder to her chest. You knew all along. You could have told me the truth. Instead, you stole me, humiliated me, and locked me away like a prisoner. His gaze was steady, but his voice carried the weight of regret. If I had told you, would you have believed me? Or would you have stood beside him, defending the very man who plotted to sell your name and your inheritance to the highest bidder? Tears blurred her vision, anger and betrayal colliding within her. You gave me no choice. You decided everything for me. Ah. He stepped closer, his tone firm but not unkind. I gave you freedom you did not know you needed. I tore you away from a man who would have destroyed you. You can hate me for it, but one day you will thank me. She shoved the folder against his chest, her voice breaking. Do not dare tell me what I will feel. You are no savior. You are just another jailer. For the first time, his composure cracked. His eyes flared with hurt, though his face remained controlled. If you truly believe that, then perhaps you will never understand why I risked everything. The weight of his words hung in the air, pressing down on both of them. She turned away, her shoulders shaking, tears finally spilling down her cheeks. The city beyond the glass glittered coldly, uncaring of the war raging in her heart. That night, she lay awake in her room, the evidence of betrayal still fresh in her mind. The image of her groom smiling beside men who trafficked in secrets and lies haunted her. But equally haunting was the memory of the man who now held her captive, his voice steady, his eyes filled with something that was not hatred but something far more dangerous. And as the hours stretched into dawn, she realized the truth was no longer simple. She was not only fighting against him, she was fighting against herself. The morning after her discovery was heavy with silence. She had barely slept, and when she finally left her room, her face was pale, her eyes hollow from hours of tears. The penthouse that once felt like a cage now felt like a battlefield, every corner holding the weight of secrets too large to bear. He was already waiting in the living room, seated with his phone in hand. His posture was tense, his jaw tight, his eyes shadowed by exhaustion. The moment he saw her, he put the phone down. You did not sleep, he said quietly. She did not answer. Instead, she walked past him toward the balcony. The city sprawled before her, alive and indifferent. Her voice was sharp when she finally spoke. You ruined me. Do you know what they are saying outside these walls? The news calls me a runaway bride, a traitor. A woman who betrayed her groom for his closest friend. Do you understand the humiliation I carry because of you? He stepped toward her, his voice low but firm. Would you rather they call you his widow? Because that is what you would have become. The men he worked with, the debts he owed, the schemes he orchestrated sooner or later, they would have consumed you too. Her shoulders stiffened, her breath catching in her chest. She turned, her eyes blazing with fury. You always think you know what is best for me, but you never asked what I wanted. You never gave me a choice. For the first time, his voice cracked, raw and unguarded. Because choice is a luxury you did not have, not with him, and not with me. The words struck her like a blade. She staggered back, her throat tight. So I am doomed either way, a prisoner of his greed, or a prisoner of your protection." He clenched his fists, his composure slipping. "I did not want this for you. Do you think I wanted to drag you from that altar? Do you think I wanted the world to see me as a villain? I did it because losing you to him would have been worse than every accusation, every rumor, every scar on my name." Her voice trembled as tears welled in her eyes. "You speak as if you care. But all I feel is that I have been used as a weapon in a war between two men who once called each other brothers." Silence stretched between them, broken only by the faint hum of the city below. His face hardened, though his eyes betrayed a storm of emotions. "Perhaps you are right," he admitted. "Perhaps I am no better than him. But if I must carry the blame to keep you alive, then so be it." Her chest ached with the weight of his words. She wanted to scream, to curse him, to hate him completely. But beneath her rage was a wound. She could not deny a wound, carved not by cruelty, but by the twisted form of love that bound them both. She turned away, gripping the balcony railing until her knuckles went white. For the first time since that night at the altar, she allowed herself to whisper the truth she feared most. "I do not know who I am anymore." And though he stood only a few steps behind her, the distance between them had never felt greater. That evening, the storm outside mirrored the turmoil within the penthouse. Rain lashed against the glass walls, lightning split the sky, and thunder rolled like an omen of war. She stood by the window, watching the city blur into streaks of light and water, her heart as restless as the storm. Behind her, he spoke into his phone, his tone clipped and urgent. "Keep the security tight. They know she is with me. They will come for her." Her breath caught. She turned sharply. "Who will come for me?" He ended the call and faced her. His voice was steady, but his eyes burned with intensity. "The men he owes. The men he betrayed. They will use you to destroy me. To destroy everything." Her chest tightened as fear mingled with anger. "So now, I am bait in a battle I never chose." "You are not bait," he said firmly. "You are the reason I fight." Before she could respond, the intercom buzzed, followed by the sound of fists pounding against the main doors. His men rushed down the hallway, but the tension in the air was already suffocating. He grabbed her arm, pulling her toward the private elevator. "Stay behind me," he commanded. They descended into the underground garage, the echo of footsteps and shouted threats following them. He shoved her into the back seat of a black armored car. As the engine roared to life, the garage gates burst open and headlights flared in the darkness. Vehicles blocked the exit, trapping them inside. Gunshots cracked against the metal. She screamed, ducking low as he shielded her with his body. His men returned fire, but the attackers were relentless. The car jolted forward, smashing through a blockade, sparks flying as bullets ricocheted off the reinforced panels. Her hands clutched his arm, trembling. "We will not survive this." He glanced at her, his face carved with determination. "As long as I am breathing, nothing will touch you." The car tore through the rain-slick streets, weaving between oncoming traffic, sirens wailing in the distance. Every swerve, every turn, felt like a heartbeat away from death. Yet through the chaos, she clung to him, her fear laced with a desperate trust she had tried so hard to deny. When they finally broke free, the city lights stretched before them, blurred by rain but glowing with fragile hope. He held her hand, steadying her trembling fingers. "This is what it means to stand against him," he said quietly. "This is what I have risked for you." Her heart throbbed painfully as tears filled her eyes. For the first time, she saw him not just as her captor, not just as her jailer, but as a man willing to risk everything, even his life, for her safety. And though the night was far from over, something inside her shifted. Amid the storm and the gunfire, amid the danger and the fear, she realized that the bond between them was no longer only a chain. It was becoming something else, something she could not yet name, but something she could no longer deny. The city was still trembling from the storm, when the armored car finally screeched to a halt in a hidden warehouse on the edge of the river. His men secured the perimeter, their footsteps echoing on the wet concrete. She stepped out slowly, her knees weak, her heart pounding as though it could not believe they had survived. Inside the warehouse, the air was damp and heavy. He led her to a small office tucked in the corner, shutting the door behind them. For the first time since the chaos began, silence returned. She stared at him, her voice breaking. "How much more will I lose because of this war between you and him? How many more times must I run? I am so tired of being trapped in your battles." He stepped closer, his eyes no longer sharp with command but softened with something deeper. "You are not trapped anymore. It ends tonight." Before she could ask what he meant, the doors of the warehouse burst open. Men poured in, led by the groom she once thought would be her husband. His face twisted with rage, his voice dripping with venom. "You think you can steal from me? You think you can take what is mine?" She froze, her breath shallow as the two men faced each other. The tension was electric, years of loyalty shattered into shards of betrayal. Her captor, her protector, stood firm, his voice low and steady. "She was never yours. You wanted her name, her fortune, her dignity. But you never wanted her heart. You never even saw her." The groom sneered, raising a weapon, but before he could strike, the room erupted with shouts. Law enforcement stormed in, weapons drawn. Flashing lights cut through the darkness. The groom's men fell one by one, dragged into custody. The groom himself was forced to the ground, his voice echoing with curses as handcuffs snapped around his wrists. She stood trembling, tears streaming down her cheeks. The truth was undeniable. He had saved her, not just from betrayal but from a lifetime of ruin. When the chaos settled, he turned to her. For the first time, his shoulders seemed to drop the weight of years. His voice was quiet, almost uncertain. "Now you are free. You can walk away from me. You can take back your life." Her lips parted, but no words came. She looked at him, this man who had stolen her from an altar, forced her into a contract, and yet fought with his life to protect her. Somewhere between hatred and trust, somewhere between captivity and freedom, her heart had changed. She stepped closer, her hand trembling as it reached for his. "You tore me from a false marriage," she whispered. "But in doing so, you gave me something real." His eyes widened, the walls around him breaking for the first time. He pulled her into his arms, holding her as though he feared she might vanish. The warehouse faded, the sirens distant, the storm outside finally easing. In that moment, there was no contract, no cage, no war, only two hearts bound, not by force but by choice. And as dawn broke over the river, painting the sky with fragile light, she knew the truth. What began as a fake marriage, born of anger and desperation, had become the very thing she had never believed in: love, fierce and undeniable.